Hello and welcome to my podcast. And thank you so much for joining me. I know you could be doing so many other things with your time, and so I don't take it for granted. In 2019, the World Health Organization said that 1 out of every 8 people in the world, that is 970 million people, suffered from one kind of mental illness or another. In fact, the numbers were seen to be increasing post-COVID, especially anxiety and depression. In a study in Zambia by Margaret Nzala Munakape, she observed that students, prisoners, people with no jobs, and especially those living in extreme poverty are more likely to have a mental breakdown, to suffer from some sort of mental illness. Now, to most of us, when we think about mental illness, we think about those mad people we see on the streets picking from garbage bins. But there are a lot of people with mental illness who look just like you and me, in our families, in our communities, our workplaces, in our churches, everywhere. It is a very, very important subject, and I'm very, very glad that my guest today has agreed to share her story with us on some of the challenges she has experienced through her illness. Please let us welcome Candice Rogoff. Thank you for coming to my podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It is a pleasure, and we are extremely grateful that you agreed to come to discuss such a sensitive topic, which many people are not willing to discuss. So we are really, really grateful.
Thank you, Dora.
Now, let us just start from the beginning. Tell me about yourself. Where were you born?
Dora, I'm originally from South Africa. I've been with my husband, Rudy, for 29 years. Mm-hmm. We actually celebrated our togetherness of 29 years over the Easter weekend. Mm-hmm. I've been coming to Zambia since 1995. And in 2010, we moved here permanently.
Permanently?
Yeah.
Okay.
So very, very happy to be in Zambia. It is a wonderful country. And
do you have children?
I have children. Mm-hmm. I've got 2 children, but they are adults now.
Okay. Are you a grandmother already?
No, I don't want to ever be a granny. Well, not yet. I have my son, Gabriel. He's 21 years old. And he did an apprenticeship as a jockey in South Africa. So he's trying to get to the UK to become a work rider and then a jockey.
Okay.
So,
and the second child?
And my daughter Jade is 19 years old, and she has autism and a syndrome, a very rare syndrome, but we manage it quite well. We've been through our ups and downs with the whole thing. And this is
the month for autism, April, isn't it?
Yeah. We've been doing huge promotion this month with Jade. She's an artist. So during COVID, we discovered she actually has a flair for art and color. And
how easy has it been to raise a child with autism? Did you notice anything strange as she was growing up?
When she was born, she was normal. She looked beautiful. She was a little angel. I mean, she was a very pretty baby, which I think most parents always say their babies are the prettiest or the most good looking. She was an angel. She slept right through the night. She never made a sound. We didn't think it was abnormal. But yeah, then we sort of were watching her milestones before a year, and she was battling to sit. She couldn't crawl. She kept on having little seizures called petit mals. And also her tongue used to stick out, and she used to drool quite a lot. And at about a year, my mother said, I think there's something wrong with your daughter. But at that stage, I was suffering with postpartum depression, but we'll get to that, I'm sure, just now. So I wasn't noticing things. I was totally oblivious to my surroundings and my environment at the time. Anyway, I went off to a pediatrician. She did a couple of checks, and she said to us, I think your daughter's got autism.
Let's take a step back. You said you were suffering from postnatal depression. You have 2 children. When did it start? With the first child?
Yes. So I had my own business, so I've always had my own business. I think I'm unemployable, but I've always had that drive, and always something crafty. My businesses have always been sort of creative, crafty, and so ran my business, fell pregnant, and obviously after the birth, I just slowly started slipping. It just very difficult to manage a business, manage a baby. I didn't have full-time help.
Describe to us, when you said sleeping, what were you, the sleeping.
Yeah.
You were sleeping. What were you feeling?
Well, you feel very blue. Postnatal depression is bluesy. There's no coping. Just generally feeling down.
Would you spend the whole day in bed?
No, I've never been one of those depressives. But just generally just not feeling myself. But in 2002, I don't think mental health was valued. I don't think people understood mental health. When you have a sort of a brain disorder or a chemical imbalance, people don't see it as a problem. If you have a heart condition, you go to the heart specialist, the cardiologist, he gives you medication, or you change your diet, or you go for an operation and you fix your heart.
Explain to us, how bad were these episodes with you just feeling so blue?
Well,
days, weeks?
In the beginning, it was just gradual, but I fought it off. Because I didn't want to be depressed. So you fight it off and eventually it gets so bad. Okay.
What kind of thoughts were you having?
Well, I got to a point where I wasn't coping. I wasn't the person that I thought I was. And then I started having confidence issues. Then it just carried on going downward. I was going down this downward spiral.
You wouldn't want to leave your home?
No, it's not that I wanted to leave the home. I think I put so much pressure on myself to be a mom, a business person, and I just couldn't actually cope. And the more I couldn't cope, the worse the situation got. And I never treated the postnatal depression.
Were you having panic attacks?
Not at that stage. So I was very strong, but still bluesy. I was one of those depressives that put on a smile. I just didn't want the world to really know how down I was. So at this stage with Gabriel, I was down. Then Gabriel turned 13 months. He was 13 months old and I fell pregnant with Jade. So it was a very short gap. And gave birth to Jade when my son was 19 months old. Now having two kids, under the age of 2, I still wasn't coping. And it just got worse and worse. What I had done in the meantime with my second pregnancy is I got a full-time maid to help me in the house and to help me with Jade and Gabriel. I then put Gabriel into a nursery school full-time just to give me a break and to try and focus on my business. But it just, the pressure, I don't know what it was. I couldn't cope anymore. And then...
Are you just one of those people that just doesn't cope with pressure very well?
Yes, anxiety kicked in. And I do cope with pressure now. There's that flight or fight mode. So generally due to, I would say, emotional immaturity, I would go into flight mode, not being able to handle knocks in life.
Okay.
Honestly, but I was young, I was 27 and I had 2 kids.
So you have these 2 toddlers, infants in your home. How did you cope then every day to be a mother? What do you remember? Were you shouting more? If they cry, were you just going into hiding? What kind of shape did this feeling blue take for you?
I was still a very involved mother, but I did start getting quite aggressive. How horrible do you want to hear?
We want to hear everything. Share those stories with us.
Obviously, after the sort of diagnosed from that pediatrician about Jade, we then went off to a specialist to find out more if there was a syndrome. And yes, there is a syndrome. So Jade has a chromosomal abnormality. And it just seemed one knock after another knock after another knock.
Does it mean it's hereditary from your family? No.
No. So we did genetic counseling.
Okay.
Where they also tested Rudy and myself, and we both came back clear.
Okay.
It was a glitch at embryo stage. Okay. So it just was one of those things.
And that made your situation even worse.
Even worse. And so we were busy doing this testing, which took about 18 months with Jade. And it was just playing on my mind. And it just, I don't know, all these things coming at me, the business not doing well, and then the confidence again. And then the kids, I was battling, trying to raise them. But I was doing the best I could at the time.
Tell us some of your worst moments and what you did.
I couldn't cope with my son. He was just very difficult because he needed my attention at the time. And I couldn't give it to him. He was just coming up to 3 and he really needed mommy.
You were going to hiding away from the child?
No, not hiding. I was very aggressive. I would smack. The one day I did, I throttled him. And my dad, who was living with me at the time, had to pull me off my 2.5-year-old child.
So it would get you very angry.
Very angry. And then I remember just before I had my first nervous breakdown, my daughter, and it was before her actual syndrome diagnosis, I was so angry with her. It's flooding. I picked her up by her hair and I threw her across the room.
You threw your baby across the room.
She was about 18 months old. It was a very, and when I did that, I phoned my husband at work and I said, "You have to come home. I've done this." And I couldn't talk for about 3 days.
Did you realize you had a problem? Something was wrong?
No, I was fighting. I was fighting. So I had this nervous breakdown, and that's when I started going to a psychologist and then to a psychiatrist because I actually had to be medicated.
Candice has just explained how aggressive she was towards her family due to her mental illness. After the break, she explains how therapy and treatment via antidepressants made her suicidal.
Did family tell you needed to get help?
Yeah, we all agreed. We all agreed.
I know in some families, the person suffering will usually deny it and say, no, it's just pressure. No. I'm going to cope.
No, up until that point, I was fighting it and trying to be the role model and trying to be a good mum and a good wife and run a house and run a business. But eventually, when I picked Jade up by her hair, I realized I need help. And yes, I went I went to a psychiatrist. He put me on a very strong antidepressant.
Id you find a psychiatrist easily to see? Was it here in Zambia or it was in South Africa?
So we were still in South Africa. So this was around 2006, 2007. And Anyway, went to him, very weird. The psychiatrists are not very normal. They're quite introvert doctors. And psychologists you can talk to, but psychiatrists need the facts. And then they sort of medicate you from there and sort of guide you from there.
So were you seeing both a psychologist for therapy, for speaking, as well as a psychiatrist for treatment?
Not really, no. I just went straight to medication. I did have a few sessions of psychology, speaking to a counsellor. And then when she advised me to go for medication, I then sort of decided stupidly not to go for the counselling. And I should have actually gone for the counselling.
Was it just for you or for your whole family?
What, the counselling? Yeah, for me, and to cope, to try and give me coping mechanisms with the family. So I can't remember why I didn't carry on with the counselling. I think it was a financial thing. Our medical aid wouldn't pay for everything. So yeah, you just had to
make a decision.
And meds, it was either meds or psychology, but we couldn't do both.
Let's go back again a little bit. While you were going through these episodes, the World Health Organization says the two most mental disorders are anxiety and depression. What about your friends? Were you speaking to them? Did they know? Were you hiding? Did you feel as if this is a big stigma for me? I need to hide it from friends?
They knew I was not myself. And at the time, I didn't quite disclose my real situation and how bad it was. But after the Jade episode, when I abused her, I let everyone know. I wasn't afraid. But yeah, at the time, people didn't quite understand depression. I mean, one family member, and I love her dearly, my dearest cousin, she said she's a very strong individual and nothing gets her down. And she's amazing like that. And she kept on saying, come on, man, snap out of it. You can do it, And it's that is possibly...
Women have been having children forever.
Yes,
Get
and
out
you're
of it.
not the only one. And come on, man, you're strong. You can do it. But when you are in that, it's a chemical imbalance. So I have an error in the brain with the imbalance. And it's the worst thing to hear. Come on, snap out of it. It's the worst thing to hear.
You said when you threw your baby across the room, that was the lowest, and you called your husband. How was your husband responding or reacting to you before you got the diagnosis that it was postnatal depression?
My husband has been my rock. He's accepted me, he supported me, and I mean, he was also battling, but he was the provider, and he couldn't really give up or go into it. I'm sure he went into his own world of depression, but men are different. They do tend to box things up and, I don't know, sort of just work through it on their own. I'm not saying they don't get depressed like women, but he handled it much better than I did. He was very supportive. Thank God I didn't hurt Jade. She didn't, there wasn't any broken bones or bruises. It was just, so I was very lucky there, but very supportive. My parents were very supportive. My in-laws were very supportive. They actually sent my sister-in-law down to South Africa after that to look after me and the kids while I was trying to get ready, get better, on these, the antidepressants. Because when you start antidepressants, your symptoms exacerbate. So you become more depressed, you become more suicidal, so it's a very precarious situation.
Before you tell us exactly how the treatment goes and has been going for you, did you at any point, maybe because of feeling so blue all the time, start abusing alcohol or other drugs at all?
I'm very, very lucky. Unfortunately, I've experienced, my father is a recovering drug addict. So I have been through the family rehab side of things while he went through rehab. And when I found out, I was about 21 when we realized my dad was an addict. and I stopped all alcohol, and I just became a teetotaler.
Okay, so by
And I
27,
made
when you're having the
27
children, you were not drinking
No,
any
I've
alcohol.
never ever relied on any drugs or alcohol that's why I felt so much pain.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I never had anything to numb. My only vice now is smoking cigarettes, which I actually have to give up. I mean, it's I've got to make that decision. But I still to this day, I'll have an odd drink. And but I'm very, very cautious of alcohol and drugs, because drugs, alcohol know no boundaries. I've met pastors, I've met CEOs of huge corporations that are sex addicts, drug addicts, alcoholics. Some of them were all three. You know, it knows no boundaries. So I just, at 21, I just had a beautiful switch in my head, and I've just never ever resorted to alcohol and substance abuse.
Now, for most families to come to a decision to say we need to take someone to a psychiatrist or psychologist, it's almost like admitting some shame. How was it for you with your family on the first day of meeting the psychiatrist?
My family were very supportive. They finally realized there was a problem with me, and they wanted me to get better.
And you went to see him?
And we went to go and see him.
How was the first session? How was your first meeting?
The meeting it was quite weird. I wasn't obviously in a great space. I did let you know that I didn't talk for about 3 days. I did not say a word for about, I cried for 6 weeks, but that first week I couldn't stop crying. And I just listened to him. My husband was there, so he listened, you know, and, you know, took all the advice from the psychiatrist. And he did sort of explain what I would go through in the initial 4 to 6 weeks.
The treatment was 4 to 6 weeks?
No. The medication. So the initial taking of the medication exacerbates the symptoms of depression. So if you are feeling suicidal, you could take it one step further and actually take your life.
Once you start taking the medication.
While it's getting into your system and your system's adjusting, there are some very bad side effects that come with the medications. And these
drugs are to correct the chemical imbalance.
Yeah, they are antidepressants. He put me on a very strong, I remember a strong antidepressant called Wellbutrin. And I think it was too strong for me. But I carried on, I persisted. I had my sister-in-law with me in those first 6 weeks.
Give us some details. When you took these drugs, exactly how were you feeling? What did you do? What do you remember? First week, second week?
Even on the drugs, look, I can't remember. This is now 20-odd years, 18, 19 years ago. For 6 weeks, when I call it the nervous breakdown, I cried every single day. So the meds really, they didn't help the pain. They didn't take you get this pain in your solar plexus. You get this anxiety in your chest, in your jaw. Your jaw clenches up. Everything is amplified by 100. And it's just, I couldn't even, like, it was over the Christmas period as well. We were packing to go on a small holiday. I looked inside my cupboard and I could not pack my suitcase, let alone pack for the children. I looked at my cupboard and it just looked like absolute chaos. I couldn't even work out. I just couldn't even pack my suitcase. Toiletries, I couldn't do anything.
Did you ever attempt to commit suicide?
Never. So, but always planning. I always planned. I needed an out. And I was always planning. And that sort of stopped 2017. So for a long time, I was always planning my exit and which way to do it, hanging, gun, but not that I own a gun. Pills, overdose, or drive. A lot of my things were to drive into another truck, preferably a truck. It was one of my
thinking about how you would kill yourself.
How I would just
drive into a truck.
I would just drive over the road and into a truck, and that's one of my, my bigger plans. That was, but it was always thought, and then that thought consumed me. Now to have consuming thoughts of suicide, and when you cannot look anywhere, do anything, and it's just consuming, it's debilitating. So you can't actually function in society.
At the end of the 6 weeks treatment, what happened?
You continue, but I realized that the drugs were too strong. So we went back to the psychiatrist after the Christmas break, and he put me onto a milder antidepressant. And it was a lot. It seemed to calm down, and I seemed to stabilize. But then I got to a point where I was getting better and feeling stronger in myself. And I can come off the meds. So they call it self-medicating. So instead of going back to the psych, I just decided, okay, they told me, be very careful. You can't just come off these kind of medicines. You have to titrate, which means weaning off gradually. But I sort of weaned off in like 3 days. And it's actually a couple of weeks process to wean off antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication.
And what happened to you after that?
Well, I basically, so cold turkey is you stop immediately. But I did mild cold turkey, so 3 days. Your body goes into withdrawal. And then, but you go with the antidepressant, so the body goes into withdrawal more with the anti-anxiety. It's terrible. You get the DTs, you get the shakes, you feel like you're having a heart attack, you sweat. Those are benzodiazepines. I think that's the correct word. So you've got to be very careful with anti-anxiety medication. The antidepressants, you sort of come off cold turkey. You sort of maintain it normal, so you're not down in the low. You maintain it normal, and then you just gradually, and you don't even see it. You just gradually go back into the hole.
Into relapsing.
Okay. So depression, and my depression is a wave. Okay? So now you're coming back to normal, then you're slipping down, and then you are going up into mania.
Tell me, as you sit in front of me right now and our audience, how are you? How are you coping now?
I am in the most fantastic space. I'm 47 years old. I've been through a lot of suffering. I'm going to call it suffering. And a lot of pain. I've had wonderful moments, but today I sit here and I'm a strong individual.
You've learned how to cope.
I've learned how to cope. I'm now in fight mode. I don't go into flight. I deal with things that come. If they come, I deal with them.
And you've been on medication for how many years?
I went, after my self-medicating for many years, I went back to my psychiatrist here in Zambia.
So you did find some help
I did.
in Zambia.
When I moved back to Zambia in 2010, by 2011 I'd found a psychiatrist here. And I've been with him ever since, so 2011 to today.
To date.
Him and my husband decided, until I was ready to be treated properly, he wasn't allowed to treat me. And I had to basically hit rock bottom. Again. But then at that point, 2017, I went back to my psych. And I said to him, there's got to be another way. Because what actually happened, sorry, let me just backtrack a bit. Antidepressants sent me into mania. Okay, so antidepressants are meant to take you out of that low and get you to normal. But what was happening with me on antidepressants is I was shooting up into mania.
So what does that mean, into mania?
So mania is a different kettle of fish. I became a powerhouse. This is what I felt. But you do achieve. Okay, so if you're a go-getter, and I am a go-getter, I'm a business owner, I could multitask, but like 10 things at a time. I couldn't
You became
sleep.
a busybody.
I was a
Couldn't sleep.
busybody. I thought I was confident, but I was actually arrogant and bitchy and horrible.
And being
just
difficult to live with at
Difficult
home.
and just not accepting anything but the best and spending. I thought money grew on trees and just not that I've been an ostentatious person, but just spending unnecessarily. I just felt like nobody could knock me down.
Okay.
And just very aggressive and belligerent and
And then this psychiatrist in Zambia now, you are happy.
Yeah, I've been with him. I haven't really felt the need to change because in 2017, when I went back with my tail between my legs and I'd realized that I'm seriously
Ill.
a problem to myself
Ill.
because of the self-medicating, and I am ill, or I was ill. He decided to change from antidepressants to a mood stabilizer. And I don't say this works for everybody, but he put me on this mood stabilizer, and once again, it takes 4 to 6 weeks to work and start working in your body. And I remember phoning him and saying, "Oh, doc, it's not working. I feel terrible." He says, "Candy, it's only been 2 weeks." Then I'd phone him third week, "Doc," and it was the suicide thoughts. That was what was really getting me down, was these. And I didn't ever feel like I would do it, but it was consuming. My head was going to explode.
There's a study somewhere that at least 54% of young people, I think in America, actually think about killing themselves, and 34% actually plan to do it, and 13% even attempt to do it. So you're quite in a frightening space.
Yeah, no, it was not good.
You did mention to us, maybe as we come to an end, that you have a child who's autistic. What motivation has that given you? Yourself recognizing that you have mental illness, and then you have this child who's autistic. What kind of motivation has it given you to do work around these issues?
Well, I've never been afraid to talk about depression, bipolar, and autism. And I would say in the last 2 years, I've really sort of woken up to the fact that there's not enough exposure about it. People need to talk about it, especially autism, especially in Zambia, where people find that the general public do find it's witchcraft, and I want people to know that I've been through this. She's matured. As she's got older, she's got more manageable. And I want people to know that there is support out there.
Do you worry for her that she could actually, maybe once she has a child, also suffer from postnatal depression like you? Which can become quite a lifetime.
Yeah. No, Jade's condition is life. So she will need assisted living for the rest of her life. So what my husband and I need to do is look at putting into an assisted living program, which is a home, but I cannot do that right now. Although I need a break from Jade quite often, I can't put her away. I just can't do it. But she will need, if Rudy and I die tomorrow, my son has to obviously step in and take over, but it's not also fair on him. So we do need to actually come up with a plan. That is the one thing that I haven't tackled. We talk about it, but we sort of avoid it. We're in denial, but we actually do need to tackle it.
Has that family challenge, living with a child who has a condition, even made your mental health situation worse? Do you think you'd have probably coped better if you didn't have a child who also had a condition?
Yeah, no, it made it worse. Every challenge that came made my depression worse. They were almost like triggers. My biggest trigger is the fear of not having money. So, unfortunately, with my dad's addiction, he lost his fortune. And he was a very wealthy man in 1997.
So it's a trigger for you.
I've got triggers. But I've coping with them. I've accepted those triggers. Or I've accepted what happened. I can't control it.
May is Mental Health Month.
Yes.
Are there activities you are participating in around the topic?
Okay. So I own the art shop, Zambia Limited, and we have a gallery, and I support the local art industry by displaying artworks from various different artists in Zambia. Next week, we are actually having an art exhibition. So we're still in April, which is Autism Awareness Month. And next week's event is about, I'm featuring 5 disabled artists. We've got Jade. So Jade is an artist, a beautiful abstract artist, not being biased, but it is. Then I have Mr. William Miko, who is an amputee and suffers with diabetes. I then have, he's a visual artist. Then I've got George Mwanza, who's a sculptor. He's recently been diagnosed with a heart condition. I can't repeat the name, it's too long. I really am sorry. But his challenges are, he can't, most of the month he can't work because he's so weak. Most artists rely on their art, on their trade. And he's battling mentally about how he's going to survive day
Anxiety.
to day. Yeah, and anxiety. So he's obviously, I wouldn't say he's depressed, but he's stuck, but yet he still produces work. So we are exhibiting his sculptures on the evening. Then we have Mr. Enoch Ilunga, a lovely old chap. He's a stroke survivor and a very, very well-known artist. I think most of Bank of Zambia have all his artworks. They've been a great supporter of Mr. Ilunga. He's got huge challenges. His daughter has to sort of aid him every day. He can speak, but he can't get the words out. And he gets frustrated and angry, and I'm sure he's in depression. Look, his English is not great, and the daughter's quite quiet. So I'm not getting the full story.
Okay. And finally, who's the last person?
And the last one is Caroline Mioba, and she suffers with clinical depression. So we are hoping she will participate in the event, fingers crossed. She is battling. She is in a bad phase at the moment, but we just got fingers crossed. I don't want to pressurize her, but I think, we'll just wait and see. She's got until Saturday, so we're holding fingers. So that's, the exhibition's called The Fault in Our Stars.
The Fault in Our Stars.
Yeah. So it is from a movie title, and none of us anticipated having any of these faults in our lives. I didn't anticipate having a daughter with a syndrome and on the autistic spectrum. Mr. Miko didn't expect in his lifetime to have a leg amputated. George, the heart condition, he never realized. So
all of you have been dealt the hand you've been
and I'm
dealt
the
with.
sort of curator, owner of the art shop and the gallery. And I've, gone through my mental health issues and I've come out. And these artists are producing and they are creating hope. So that is what I'm promoting, is hope, acceptance. And that's all I can say. I mean, and that's what I do. And I love what I do. And we'll see. Well, next week's, we're 1 week away today, so I've got so much work to get through.
Don't get any anxiety, please.
No, I'm actually very calm. I mean, even today's podcast, I would never have done this. Never. And this year, I've taken a stand. I'm me, and I'm going to show people who I am. And I think that's a great space to be in.
Candice, thank you so much for sharing your story about the challenges of living with mental health. There are many, many people out there, including women suffering postnatal depression, as you did yourself, who will learn from you that this is a disease. And there are so many people around the world suffering from this same disease. And you can't hide it. What you need is to seek professional treatment, professional help. You don't necessarily have to be a drug addict or an alcohol addict to have mental health challenges.
Yeah.
So it is important that people do seek professional help. So we are so grateful you shared your story. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me and letting me share my story.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, that was our podcast for today. As I said in the beginning, the World Health Organization says 1 out of 8 people in the world, just under 970 million people, suffer from one form of mental illness or another. Let us not stigmatize the disease. The people suffering from mental diseases are real people, ordinary people like you and me, and they need your help. So if you know somebody who's having challenges, depression, anxiety, and whatever psychotic episodes they may be having, there is treatment. Go and see a psychologist or a psychiatrist so that they can get the professional help that they need. Until next Sunday, I'm very, very happy that you joined us on this conversation today. Thank you.